Why did the US fight a brutal decade-long war in Vietnam but never actually invade North Vietnam? It seems counterintuitive, right? To understand this, we need to go back to the mid-1950s. After kicking out the French, Vietnam was split in two. A communist North and a US-backed South. The US got involved to stop the spread of communism, a policy known as the Domino Theory. The idea was that if South Vietnam fell, other countries in Southeast Asia would follow suit. So, why not just go straight to the source and invade the North? The number one reason was a four-letter word: China. The US had learned a very painful lesson just a decade earlier during the Korean War. As American forces pushed deep into North Korea, nearing the Chinese border, China sent hundreds of thousands of troops pouring across, completely changing the war. President Lyndon B. Johnson and his advisors were haunted by this memory. They were terrified that a full-scale invasion of North Vietnam would provoke the same response from China, potentially even triggering a direct conflict with the Soviet Union. This wasn't just a small-scale war anymore, it could have escalated into World War III. This fear shaped America's entire strategy. The goal wasn't to destroy North Vietnam, but to contain it. They wanted to defend South Vietnam and wear down the North's will to fight through bombing campaigns like Operation Rolling Thunder and a war of attrition. The hope was that by making the war incredibly costly for the North, they would eventually give up their goal of unifying the country under communist rule. This was a strategy of containment, not rollback. The US military was essentially fighting with one hand tied behind its back. They were forbidden from crossing the 17th parallel, the line dividing North and South Vietnam. There were also practical and political considerations back home. In North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minhs' communist government was deeply entrenched. They weren't just seen as a political party, they were celebrated as the heroes who had liberated the country from French colonial rule. Their brand of communism was fused with nationalism, giving them immense popular support. US leaders were pessimistic about their chances of ever truly winning the hearts and minds of the northern Vietnamese people. A ground invasion would have meant fighting not just an army, but an entire population in a hostile landscape of jungles and mountains. Furthermore, a full-scale invasion would have been incredibly expensive, both in terms of money and lives. The US Congress never authorized the kind of massive mobilization of troops and resources needed for such an operation. The Vietnam War was already deeply unpopular at home, with protests growing larger and more intense every year. Sending millions of troops to occupy an entire country would have been political suicide and would have stretched the US military to its breaking point. This put the US in an impossible position. They couldn't push forward into the North for fear of China, and they couldn't pull out for fear of losing face, admitting defeat, and abandoning their South Vietnamese allies. They were stuck in a strategic stalemate. They poured more and more resources into a defensive war they couldn't truly win. The result was a long, bloody conflict that drained American resources and morale. Ultimately, the cost became too high. The staggering casualties and the immense financial burden, combined with relentless pressure from the anti-war movement, forced the US to seek a way out. In 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, and American troops withdrew. Just 2 years later, in 1975, North Vietnamese forces rolled into Saigon, and Vietnam was unified under communist rule. The very outcome the US had fought for over a decade to prevent had come to pass. The decision not to invade the North, born out of a fear of a wider war, ultimately sealed the fate of the conflict. Thanks for watching. If you found this explanation interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into history. See you in the next video.